What is up, guys? Dzeeff here. This past weekend I entered a Remote Duel Regional Qualifier event with what is probably one of my greediest decks ever. In today's video I wanted to show you my deck profile. I did manage to get top 4 in that event, only losing in the finals to the other undefeated player. I made one of the worst misplays I have ever made in my entire life, so I definitely did not deserve to win that match. But overall the event went very well. I was a lot happier with this list of Altergeist than I was with my last one. So in today's video I wanted to show you guys my new and improved Altergeist deck list. Altergeists are probably still not a meta contender at the moment, but I do think that Pukri and Memory Gant are pretty great cards, and I think that this build of Altergeist is a very good one, and if I was playing in the YCS this weekend I would heavily consider this build. Oh, and by the way, when I say that this deck is greedy, as you'll see as we go through here, what I mean is that when you build a Yu-Gi-Oh deck, if you want to have the best chances to do well in a tournament, you want to make sure you have ideas for what to do if you go first and what to do if you go second. Maybe you play some hand traps in your deck, or board breaking cards like Forbidden Droplet or Evenly Matched or Dark Ruler. Whatever you choose to do, you know, that's up to you, but most decks are going to have some option if they go second. This deck really doesn't. The only hand trap I'm playing in the main deck is Infinite Impermanence, and I'm actually not side decking any hand traps either. So this deck is really weird because if you lose the die roll, you're probably losing game 1, but I really wanted to make sure that if I won the die roll, I absolutely would win 100% of the time. Now, was this the best idea I've ever had? Not really, but I played Altergeist enough with the kind of like going second cards in the main deck, and I thought for this tournament it'd be funny to just try and play an event where I didn't play those cards. I did lose most of my die rolls. I had to scoop a few game 1s, but overall I was pretty happy with how the deck ran. Anyway, I'm not going to spend too much time on the cards that you guys have seen a lot of already in my previous Altergeist deck profiles. I do have some new tech that I want to talk about. So we have 3 copies of Marionetter, 3 copies of Multifaker, of course, 3 copies of Altergeist Meluseek, the best card in the deck, and regardless of how people feel about this card, I still think it's great. I am playing 3 copies of Altergeist Pukri. So in the last tournament that I played with Altergeist, I feel like I didn't really draw this card that often, even though I did have 3 copies per deck, and that was actually part of the reason why I wanted to give this deck a second chance, other than the fact that that's just like part of my personality, you know, quitting Altergeist and going back to Altergeist over and over again. But yeah, Pukri was insane. Like, I drew this card a lot and it was always crazy when I drew it. This card is just incredibly powerful. I think 2 might be the right number. I did side out one of them in pretty much every single game 2 and 3, but honestly at the moment I don't know what like one random card I would put in the deck, so 3 is fine right now. But yeah, you probably only need to play 2, but the card is very strong when you manage to draw it, and searching it is pretty good too. We have 2 copies of Silk, 1 copy of Conqueror, of course, and then no hand traps. Like I said, no Ash, no Veiler, no Crow, no D-Shifter. D-Shifter was a card I liked a lot, but I found myself not able to win the games even when I was able to D-Shifter my opponent. It does kind of conflict with a few cards, like, yeah, you can Meluseek to banish a card if you D-Shifter on your opponent's turn, but then you can't use the Meluseek for Link Creepo because it'll get banished, and that was kind of awkward. But anyway, next up we have, of course, 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. I do not like Pot of Prosperity in this deck. I think Extravagance is a lot better. I just want to draw cards. You know, all the cards in the deck are good to draw, so you want to draw as many cards as possible. Yeah, Prosperity is cool because you can like pinpoint what you're grabbing, but personally I just think drawing 2 is so powerful in this deck. For the trap cards, there's a lot of them, of course. 3 copies of Personal Spoofing, 2 copies of Altergeist Protocol, and 1 copy of Manifestation. Next up, our only going second card is Infinite Impermanence. Obviously you're going to play Imperm in this deck. It is just one of the best hand traps in the format, but also it's really good with Faker. I still had to scoop all the times that I played against Sword Soul and I went second game 1. I did not draw the Imperm Faker combo, but it would have been nice, you know. But yeah, Imperm is a very good card, and it's fine if you go first as well. It's just a good trap card in general. Now at this point you might be wondering, this doesn't look that weird. It's like a regular Altergeist deck, right? What's so greedy about it? Well, let's take a look at what I'm playing for the rest of the traps. So of course, we have 3 copies of Solemn Strike, one of the best trap cards in the entire game, and we are main decking 3 copies of Solemn Judgment, which some people might see as greedy. Personally, I've always stood by Judgment. Where it gets really silly though is that I am playing 3 copies of Solemn Warning. I have not played this card in a long time. I don't even have matching rarities for a playset of this card. So Warning is a card I usually don't play in this deck. I don't think it's that great in most formats because you'd rather have like a going second card, but in this particular format, I don't think like 1 Ash Blossom or 1 Veiler is enough to stop the opponent's combo. So that's kind of why I wanted to be greedy. And Warning is really good right now when you go first, because when you use a card like Warning or Judgment or Strike on the Synchro Summon against Sword Soul, it actually makes it so that the Sword Soul graveyard effect doesn't work, which is a pretty big deal. So Warning and Judgment and Strike are really good against Sword Soul. It's very similar to the ruling against Prank Kids, which I actually did play against 1 Prank Kids in the tournament, so that did come up. I warninged the Meow, and then he basically had to pass. So I think these cards are all very good. Obviously, people are going to play Judgment and Strike. Maybe they won't main deck Judgment, but it'll probably be in their side deck, of course. But yeah, I thought that Warning was pretty funny, and it was a very good card. Would I play Warning in a longer tournament like a YCS? Probably not. Like, I don't know, it's kind of greedy, but that's kind of the theme of the deck, right? Going along with that, the other thing that I did is that I main decked, of course, Order, but also 3 copies of Summon Limit, a card that usually you want to side deck because you only want to draw it when you're going first. It's not very good going second, but we were being greedy for this event, so I was main decking 3 copies of Summon Limit. This card is incredible right now. I know the last time I played this deck, I was playing D-Barrier in the main deck instead, but this is so much better than D-Barrier against a variety of matchups. With D-Barrier, which I am still siding because the card is very good, sometimes it's not good against every deck you're playing against in game 1, so main decking it was a little bit risky on my part the last time I played this deck. With D-Barrier, I found that oftentimes I was not able to break my opponent's board of main deck monsters once my turn rolled around because they just had too many cards. So I like Summon Limit a lot because you can do a lot with just 2 summons. This card is actually way better in Altergeist than it was in the past because you actually now have Pookery, so you can even make like some sort of combo under the Summon Limit, which is really cool. You can draw for turn, use the Pookery in hand without using your normal summon to summon a Hextia. It is just overall a very good card in Altergeist right now, not only because of the format, but also because Pookery is in the deck. And I will say as a final note here about Summon Limit, because I know it's just a dumb floodgate, that this card is actually really good in game 1 because people are really not main decking back row removal at all right now. Back row removal is in people's side decks, of course, but as far as the main deck goes, like this card is pretty much always going to stick, and all you need with this card is like 1 Altergeist monster and then you are set. So I did main deck 3 Summon Limit. Is that greedy? Yes, absolutely, but that's just kind of what I wanted to do for this tournament. Anyway, for the extra deck here, we have, of course, 3 copies of Hexia, 2 copies of Prime Banshee, 2 copies of Memory Gant. I did summon this card a few times, and I OTK'd a couple opponents with it, so I like this card a lot now. I think that you just have to try to find the opportunities where you can OTK with this. It is kind of a weird card, especially for Altergeist, but if you remember this card is in your extra deck, and if you actually go for combos that end on Memory Gant, you can OTK out of nowhere, actually. It's pretty crazy. 2 copies of Link Kribo, 2 copies of Anima, 2 copies of whatever this is, Moon Maiden, 1 copy of Celine, and 1 copy of Axis Code Talker. I did finally pick one up. So the side deck is kind of weird. We have a couple cards I want to talk about. Of course, the first one, Lava Golem. Not a lot of people are playing Lava Golem. This was a card that I actually played in a Sword Soul deck a few weeks ago, but I think that Lava Golem is one of the most underrated cards in the format right now. It's like a double kaiju, which is very important because a lot of decks right now are ending on 2 monsters, not 3. So Sphere Mode, unfortunately, isn't that great, but like the most common opening for Sword Soul is Baron plus Grandmaster plus the Trap. So if you Lava Golem, it takes away all 3 of those interruptions. They don't have a worm anymore, so they can't even use the Trap card. It is truly insane, and also it stops them on the next turn as well because you'll have like your own cards at that point. Yeah, you can't normal summon, but you'll have like Spoofing or Faker or whatever, or hopefully you'll have those cards. And at that point, because they have a Lava Golem on the board, they can't actually special summon any of the Tenyi monsters, which is huge. At the moment, the Sword Soul deck is all about the Tenyi monsters as their follow-up. You have the Circle Engrave, which requires you to have a non-effect monster on the board. You have all the Tenyis in hand and stuff, so they really do rely on the Tenyi monsters for their follow-up, and giving them a Lava Golem can obviously mess up that play. Furthermore, if your opponent is able to build up some sort of board on their turn, but they don't actually OTK you, you could theoretically bounce this card with Silk and then use it again, just like you could with a Kaiju. A lot of people played Kaijus in this deck in the past, but I really think that Lava Golem is very good. My basic going second strategy was to side the 3 copies of Lava Golem, 3 copies of Lightning Storm, and 3 copies of Evenly Matched. So between these 9 cards, all you have to really do is open like any 2 of them, or open any of them plus like Impermanence, and usually you can break your opponent's board pretty easily. You know, not every opponent is going to end on a bunch of negates. People are ending on a lot of interactions right now, but for cards like Evenly and Lightning Storm, they have to have basically like a spell or trap negate or an Omni negate or whatever. So if your opponent has like a bunch of interactions, but only like one of them is a negate, if you open 2 of these cards, you can force the negate with one of them, and then just use the second one to break the entire board. So it might look kind of weird to see like no hand traps in an Altergeist deck, because Altergeists are not known for being good going second, and usually the decks that get away with playing no hand traps are the ones that are already good at going second. But I really think that with these 9 cards, and with the Impermanence and Faker in your deck, which you might sometimes draw, I think that this particular build actually does do pretty well going second. Keep in mind, I entered this tournament with the full knowledge that I would probably lose a game 1 if I went second. So the idea was that if I had to scoop game 1, in game 2 they wouldn't know what I was playing, and I'd be going first, so that would be pretty easy. And then in game 3, I would side into all 9 of these cards to break their board, and all of these cards were extremely good in this tournament. I think that this strategy did work out surprisingly well. I was a little bit nervous, but actually all of those cards were very good. And then of course my seems like my signature card here, 3 copies of a Pointer. I love this card. It is like the best going first card right now. You can rip like an Evenly or a Lightning Storm, or you can just rip their best starter card as well. And then finally, 3 copies of D-Barrier. I don't like this card enough to main deck it at the moment. I think there are a number of decks that don't actually care about these types of summoning, but I think it is very good in the side deck against decks like Leerlisk and Sword Soul, which are the 2 most popular decks in the format. Anyway, that is all for today's video. A pretty greedy Altergeist deck. I usually don't play Altergeist like this. I try to play like going second cards. I've even gone as far as to main deck Evenly Matched in the past just for a going second card in the main deck, but I don't know, I just wanted to be greedy and it was a lot of fun. I really wish I would have gotten that first place, but it was completely my fault. I made a huge misplay. I think that this deck is a lot of fun. I don't know if I would always play it as this like greedy must go first version, but for one tournament it was a pretty cool idea, and I did have a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I'll see you later though. Goodbye.